Richard Browd asks, are you into amateur astronomy? Probably should have taken that one first. After, I don't know, 5 hours, 6, 7, 8 hours of talking about it, the answer is yes. I didn't mean to be laughing at you, Richard. I'm laughing at myself for the placement of that question. I probably should have put that first. He goes on to say, these days most near-Earth excursions by asteroids are found by these talented amateurs. I think this proves there is still very valuable work being done in science away from big universities and government grants. There is less pressure to bend to the consensus, but there's a lot more motivation to do original work. Your thoughts? I couldn't agree more. I'm so proud of it. Amateur astronomy is the giant parallel processing pool of highly observable events. Somebody please write that down and send it back to me. That's what it is, right? Yet hundreds of thousands, if not, well, millions certainly, if not maybe tens or even hundreds of millions of amateur astronomers out there in the world who are observing things that are large enough to be observed with a naked eye, telescopes, small telescopes, binoculars, that kind of thing. And when you have hundreds of millions of people looking at things, or tens of millions of people, then you start to see things that the big universities can't because they're not throwing as wide a net. They're throwing a deeper net, but not as wide. So yes, whenever anybody using a little telescope, a 10-inch telescope or something, tracks a new asteroid and able to get the orbit worked out based on the appearance of this thing across the stars, it's not something you have time to do with big telescopes like the Hubble. You need lots and lots and lots of little telescopes looking everywhere, and it's wonderful, and it's democratic, and it's cool, and it's something to be proud of. I don't know if I've told this story before. I don't know if I've told it in this segment before. I didn't tell it in this episode before. That much I do remember in the midst of my cortisol deficiency. I had forgotten the story until I saw my old friend Phil Trick. Phil, if you're watching, hi. And you and Bobby, as you know, changed my life. Phil Trick gave me a moral core. He was really a dad I didn't have. He worked at the Miami Planetarium with us. It had an enormous effect on me, enormous. But I'd forgotten this story because I actually do have a kind of a fundamental humility, believe it or not. I'm certainly extremely humble for a guy who looks this good. Let's just put it that way. It's so funny. Anyway, back when I was a skinny, pimply little science astronomy geek, Phil reminded me of this. We were at the Southern Cross Observatory. I'd been working at the planetarium for probably a year, maybe not even that long. I was 14 years old, I think. And like any major city, there was a tremendous amount of light pollution. So as it started to get dark, you never got a really dark sky. But as the sky got darker, needless to say, the brightest star in the sky is the first star you see if you know where to look, and then you get dimmer stars and dimmer stars and dimmer stars. And so we were at the point where we could probably see first magnitude stars. That meant if you were really paying attention, you might see 6 or 7, 8 stars up there. It was still pretty light out. And I was looking up. I was 14. I just got started, but I knew my astronomy. I really did. And I was looking up, and I thought, well, wait a minute. No, hold on. Now, everything's wrong now. I just had this thought internally. Everything's wrong because I thought that was Deneb, and I thought that was Altair, and I thought that was Vega, but that star's there, and that doesn't make any sense, so I got to be wrong, and I got to figure out where did I make a mistake? And I kept looking. I said, no, that is Vega, and that is Deneb, and that is Altair. They're in the right space, they're the right colors, the right relative brightness, and over there's Arcturus. And so what is that star that's causing me all this trouble? And I pointed it out to Phil, and Phil looked up. He said, I don't know. And he got on the phone, and he called the Smithsonian, because Phil knew these kind of things. And he called the Smithsonian Observatory, and I don't know if he left a message or something. It was 1973 or 74. Turns out it was a supernova. And I was the second person to see it on the eastern seaboard. I think somebody in Boston saw it before I did, and we were only beaten out by something like 200,000 amateur astronomers in Asia and Japan who were looking at it when it went off. But it was kind of heads-up ball for me, and I was pretty proud of the fact. I'd utterly forgotten about it for 40 years until Phil pointed it out to me a little less than a year ago. Reminded me of it. I'd just completely forgotten that it happened. But it was pretty cool. I mean, it was a real kind of, on one level I was in the right place at the right time. I was looking up at the sky and at sunset on the eastern coast. And there was no internet then. There was no big announcement. There was no way to know about something like this. But it turns out there was a supernova in Cygnus And I think you can see the remnant of it today. It's been 30, 40 years since that thing blew up, and there's a neat little planetary nebula where that used to be. But I was the second person in America to see it, and I saw it while it was still damn near broad daylight out there, and it was something to be proud of. That's the power of amateur astronomy. You get a bunch of fired up people looking at things, and you never know what's going to happen.